All right, I've been sitting in the silence of my closet for entirely too long, just scrolling through the Twitters at the moment. So, yeah, we're back. We are back in unqualified analysis. We got some stuff to talk about today. The cupboard still bare, still kind of bare. I think we have one, two, three headlines from the past week. We'll add a fourth in there just as a quick aside, probably to start this thing off. But yeah, we are back. Should be another fairly short one, fairly simple off-season episode. So, yeah, one thing, not one thing I learned this week. One fun fact, though, before we get started here: when Alexander the Great besieged the island of Tyre in 332 BC, he won the battle by filling the channel between the island and the mainland of what is now Libya. Over 2,350 years later, Tyre is not an island still. So, there you go. There's a real chance that I read that at the end of last episode, and I just recycled that. It's all good, though. It's all good, though, man. We're already here. We're back. It is unqualified analysis. You're learning new stuff, and you know what? If that's not something new to you, if I said at the end of last episode, well, you know what? Repetition helps you learn things more. So there you go. You heard the fact twice, now you're going to learn it. It's whether you like it or not. You're going to know that when Alexander the Great filled in the channel between Tyre and the mainland of Lebanon, it never went away. It's not an island anymore because of Alexander the Great, and you're going to know that. You're going to know that. Now that I said it a third time, you're really going to know it. But we got some stuff to talk about today. I don't think I'll be going on any impassioned speeches about Joey Chestnut this time around, but we'll see. We'll see where the day takes us. Woo. Excuse me, I got my carbonated caffeine laced beverage here next to me, and that's kind of what was coming up there. I'm gonna take another good gulp, huh? Let's just take another gulp. Let's go full throttle, huh? Oh, that one didn't go down awesome, but it's there. It's there now, baby. All right, so. Couple headlines. One thing I missed from last week: the ageless Calais Campbell signed a one-year deal with the Dolphins. And usually, I don't really go back and do retrospectives on one-year signings. I think there's a real big impact pickup for him. Usually, there's a couple over the summer for these teams that. The signing kind of goes under the radar. People don't really, think about it too much. It's just in one ear, out the other. And then you come around to the fall, come around to, early winter, those sorts of things. You get into playoff push time. All of a sudden, a guy that was signed over the summer, sometimes last minute, sometimes in training camp, will come on there and be playing big time snaps for a team that's in contention. It was Kyle Van Noy last year, just for, little exhibition there for you. I think Calais Campbell could be that type of player for the Dolphins. He has a toughness in the middle that I don't know if, it's not going to replace Christian Wilkins, but, it'll help. It'll help a lot more than what they already had in there. And Calais Campbell played really well last year for his advanced age. I think he's like 38, 39 now. He's a mountain of a human being, still a mountain of a human being to this day. I think he'll help there on the inside. I think... with having the pass rushers back on the outside and Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, forgot his first name for a minute. I apologize to that man, Jalen. But Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb will be on the outside. Take some heat off of the guys on the inside. Last year is Christian Wilkins, who is still an absolute stud. I'm fascinated to see how that defensive line works for the Raiders with Max Crosby on the outside. But having those two back, coming off their season-ending injuries, it's never a guarantee when you come off of a season-ending injury. I'm looking especially at Jalen Phillips coming off of that Achilles, being as explosive of a player that he is. But I do think this guy, Calais Campbell, is going to help this defense a lot in ways that I don't think the one-year contract really kind of illustrates off the bat. So that's a guy I got my eyes on. Wouldn't usually bring up one-year contracts, but I really think that Calais Campbell's going to be an impact player for the Dolphins this year, whether it be by necessity or whether it just be by standout play. You're hoping it's the second if you're a Dolphins fan, but I feel like it will be one way or the other. He's going to be an impact player. I think he's going to be very good for this team this year, so that's going to be one to watch. I think the Dolphins it's not exactly a strong division. At least not right now. It doesn't look like you got those quarterbacks in the division though. With the exception of the Patriots, I think everyone else has got a fairly proven quarterback. We'll see how Rodgers looks coming off of that Achilles and any weird sort of leadership situations that pop up over there. But outside of that, I mean, the other two, you got Josh Allen. Now you got Tua on the Dolphins. So I mean, the Dolphins, especially with that offensive personnel they've got, offensive line still a question mark there, especially with the departure of Robert Hunt this offseason. But, I mean, you look at Mike McDaniel's offense, it did very, very well in the regular season last year. That Miami home field advantage is a real one down there in wherever they play. Is it still Hard Rock? I don't remember. I don't remember right off the top of the dome there. But watch out for that signing. I think that's going to be a big one. I think people are going to look back and say, hey, bringing in Calais Campbell is what made this defense at the very least serviceable on the outside of the big pass rushers coming back. So yeah, just wanted to say that is one to watch. I missed it last week. I apologize. Now you are educated upon the subject. I keep almost choking. I don't know what's going on. Don't know if it's coughs. I don't know if it's burps. We're in it, folks. We are absolutely in it right now. Anywho, let's get into some headlines here, and not a single one about pro football. So if you're here for pro football takes, you've already heard them all. Already heard them all for the day. Oh, with the exceptions. Well, we'll just get it all out of the way at the top. The Chiefs are releasing Isaiah Buggs. You may remember he got arrested multiple times this offseason. I know at least one of them was for mistreating dogs. So, yeah, that's one of those. That's one of those things, man. If you're not Rashee Rice, maybe head on a swivel. Maybe head on a swivel. Try and keep your head in the playbook over the summer. Keep yourself in the gym. Because if you're out there on the streets doing some dumb shit, maybe you're not so fortunate enough to be the presumed number one, number two wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes this year. Especially not when you're a rotational defensive lineman. Not good. Not good. So yeah, Isaiah Buggs is out with the Chiefs. But yeah, that's the only other NFL headline I've got, because we are in almost July and there ain't shit happening. There's not shit happening. Especially now that OTAs are done. We got this nice 30, 40-day period where the guys are taking their last vacations. Ain't nobody doing shit in the NFL unless someone gets arrested, like, shout out Isaiah Buggs. Not really a whole lot of news coming out of the NFL. Maybe some extensions in there, Lord willing. But we got other stuff going on. McJesus over there brought it back from 0-3. Now they're in Game 7 tonight as I'm recording this. You kidding me? That's some good stuff. We could see the best player in hockey get his first Stanley Cup on, the most legendary way possible. Future legacy builder at the end of the day. Who's to say? Who's to say? I mean, maybe Paul Maurice and the Florida Panthers have something to say about it, but we won't know until tonight as I'm recording this. You'll know when you're listening to this whether I'm getting a little ahead of myself or not. But I like great players being great, so I'm cheering for Connor tonight. Cheering for the Oilers. Cheering for the Oilers woman who is, she's great. Awesome personality. Says screw the haters. We're not through 10 minutes yet, so I don't want to say the actual word she said. But oil rig worker. I mean, a hard working, not American, but Canadian. Which, I mean, she's paying even more of her fair share, because Canada, those taxes are, they're big, they're up there. So, hey, I love the Oilers, man. Longtime Oilers fan. People who know me know that I've always been an Oilers fan. I've always said, what's happening with McDavid and Draisaitl tonight? When they were doing bad stuff early in the season, they fired their coach. I was upset. You saw it on the podcast. I'm sure you could tell when the Oilers were starting badly. I was distraught. Obviously, you can go back and look at it. I'm sure you can find a spot where I was distraught about this. I mean, I love the Oilers. Love McDavid. Love Draisaitl. Love that beautiful woman in the stands, showing off her assets, so to speak. So, yeah, it was great. That was at a watch party, too. It wasn't even at the game. I was at a watch party in Edmonton. Great fans. Great fans. And obviously, I'm one of them. So, yeah, that's happening. Outside of that, though, we just got some basketball to talk about, man. There's a couple things going on in the basketball space that can maybe help me fill like 40 minutes to an hour or so. So, first and foremost, we'll save that for the second headline. First headline, because why would I hit anything else? JJ Reddick, you know him from his several podcasts, most specifically, most notably, Old Man in the Three. Well, maybe not most notably because he started this past year a podcast with one LeBron James called Mind the Game. Longtime NBA player, like 14, 15-year NBA player, played for a long, long time, very respected basketball mind. Kind of need them to keep doing the Mind the Game podcast, though, because, boy, that could be gold. That could be absolute clip gold. I mean, the question you want to ask yourself if you're JJ Reddick is, okay, do you want to win games or do you want to win the internet, man? And I don't know, that's a hard decision. Hard decision. I mean, they're paying him a lot of money, are the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm sure, absolutely sure that JJ Reddick looked at that offer to Dan Hurley and said, oh, so you have that money to offer, huh? Well, why don't we just, shorten the years a little bit and keep me around that same sort of total? Why not? Why not? And I could be wrong about that. I'm sure the contract details are out there, but who's got the time? Who's got the time to look those things up? I'm working. You're working. We're all working. We're working long hours. Then we get home and we're riding through the great American West on a video game called Red Dead Redemption. Who doesn't have that experience in their back pocket? But back to the JJ Reddick of it all here. They need to keep doing the Mind the Game podcast, man. They need to do it. They need to do it for all of us out there who want to see an inside look at what LeBron James is thinking when things go bad. Because I feel like at some point, it always seems to happen. Ever since Kobe stopped winning championships, pretty much. You can even count the last part of his career in this. Seems like the Lakers have some good top-line names. All of a sudden, they get to the season, and they're just all over the floor. It just happens. That every single year, it just seems to happen. And, I do respect JJ Reddick. I love his mind. I think, I've listened to his podcast a good fair amount. It's basically the only way that I keep up with basketball at this point is listening to JJ Reddick's podcast. It's one of those that has been phased out because I no longer have quite so much time to listen to podcasts. I do enjoy listening to him talk about the game, though. I just wonder how much of what he says on that podcast is kind of just common knowledge among the NBA coaching circle. Like for us sitting here on the sidelines, so to speak, not within the game, we just want to learn about it a little bit more. We listen to JJ Reddick talk, and if you're anything like me, you're thinking this guy is a goddamn genius. He's thinking of shit that I don't even know what the hell he's talking about, but I love listening to it because he sounds like a damn expert. So we see that. I wonder how much inside of the game itself, obviously some players just go out there and ball, that not a whole lot of those, mind you, but that's kind of to my point as well. How much of that knowledge from player to player is kind of just commonplace? How much of that from coach to coach is kind of just commonplace? How much learning does JJ Reddick have to do about all the minutia that goes into being a head coach? I'm sure a fairly decent amount. I'm just wondering how much of a plus is JJ Reddick's mind when it comes to the basketball court. He's going to learn all the interpersonal stuff. That's just something that comes along. You won't really learn it till you get reps. I mean, coaching fourth graders is a little bit different than coaching NBA players. Coaching college to coaching NBA is one enormously different beast. So I don't know how he's going to do. I like him. I hope he does well. I think there's going to be some people that are salty that he got the job over them. Looking specifically at James Borrego, who was in the running for both the Cavs job and the Lakers job, ends up getting neither of those because Kenny Atkinson gets hired by the Cavs. and of course the Lakers go with J.J. Reddick. Would a guy like that maybe be a little bit salty that a guy with no coaching experience whatsoever comes straight from the booth, calls games too, so yeah, coming straight from the booth right onto the sideline to coach a game? Maybe you could see a little bit of hostility there. So I don't know. JJ Redick, I like him. I think he's a good guy. I like listening to him talk. I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that he's not going to have some degree of enemies, though, because that the way he came into the league, it's almost a given that he's going to have enemies. It's NBA coaching. It's more about how you deal with your star players. It's more about how you, not even necessarily how you motivate, how you communicate with people, how you get people going in the right direction, which is, different styles of motivation. It's not the rah-rah type of motivation you think of some bad sports movie, which, by the way, most sports movies are bad. I can debut that take another day, but most sports movies do stink. I don't like many of them. We'll, again, leave that to the sideline for now because you're going to get me going on some stuff, but not like the rah-rah sort of motivation. I'm talking like Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson had some of those speeches, but his main talent was dealing with his star players, talking to them, learning more about them, learning what makes them tick, and finding ways to get them motivated to go in there and play the best that they can each and every night. That's really what the job of an NBA head coach is. It's not necessarily the X's and O's. The out-of-timeout plays certainly help. They certainly, situational decision-making is a big part of it, obviously. But a lot of that is just kind of sticking to your guns, going with what your plan was going into it. A lot of it is just kind of just regular coach stuff. It's logic based on the situation, all that sort of stuff. The plays certainly help, drawing up plays on the sidelines, especially out of timeouts. But the main thing, you're not going to win a championship if your players don't like you, if your players don't respect you. Hell, you don't even necessarily have to be liked so much as well respected and not disliked. You don't have to be their best friend, but you can't be disliked. Otherwise, it's just simply not going to work out. I think that's a part of why Monty Williams is looking for another job. We'll get to that here in just a second. Living a charmed life, albeit being fired over the last 2 years, but the bank account is thriving, I say. But we'll get to that here in just a second. That's the next headline anyways. My main question with J.J. Redick is, how quickly can he get acclimated to interacting with the players on that team? I think he's played with Anthony Davis before. I want to say in New Orleans they were on the same team at one point. Maybe he got there a little bit after. I couldn't quite tell you that. I think that they have played, if not with each other, against each other, with a lot of players on this team. How is he going to relate to those guys in the locker room? How is he going to get them motivated? And on top of that, how is he going to, deal with making a schedule, deal with all the little shit that comes with being an NBA head coach? And he better win, I'll tell you that much right now, because he's got LeBron's ear right now. If they don't win, we see what happens to NBA coaches. Hell, you don't even have to, go outwards to the entire NBA. You can just look at what happens to Lakers head coaches, right? Look how many coaches they've had over the last year. Frank Vogel won a championship, got fired. Darvin Ham stuck around for like a year and a half, gets fired. Even before that, you can look at a laundry list of coaches who came in there, stayed for a year or two, and then they were just like, nah, we don't want you anymore. And that's pretty much the story for all of the NBA. You can get to the playoffs if you got LeBron James and Anthony Davis, no matter how good the rest of the team is. If you got those two players, you get to the playoffs and you're out in the first or second round, you're shit out of luck, buddy. Especially if you're out in the first round like Darvin Ham was last year. You are shit out of luck, buddy. You got to get to the Western Conference Finals or better. Otherwise, it is a failed season. Whether that's fair, whether it's realistic or not, that is how things turn out in the NBA. And make no mistake about it, J.J. Redick is no different in that front. Like I said, he's got LeBron James's ear now. Only takes a hot little losing streak there to turn that around. And then you're looking at a very different situation and a very entertaining episode of Mind the Game. So I'm looking forward to seeing how J.J. Redick does over there. Looking forward to it very much so. But Moving on to this second headline here. It was first because it happened first last week. I didn't, get around to organizing my stuff here. A lot of coaching stuff. Actually, it is all coaching stuff this week because that seems to be the only thing that's happening right now. But the Pistons are once again the Pistons. They have fired head coach Monty Williams after one season. A singular season there in Detroit where they were intentionally tanking. Now, that is one thing that the NFL and the NBA can both get on the same page as. You hire a head coach, tell him to be bad, be terrible. We're going to put together a bad roster. It's not going to be very hard. You just have this team lose. And after that season where you have explicitly told him to lose games so you can get a better draft pick, the front office comes back and says, by the way, you didn't win enough, you're fired. That is a tale, maybe not as old as time, but certainly as old as the past era of head coaches in both the NBA and the NFL. It's one of the only things they're on the same page on right now is how they deal with coaches who tank. We just let them go. They were only here to lose. We hired them for a reason, right? Except for in this case, you may remember last offseason, Monty Williams signed a 6-year, $78.5 million contract. So that's a good golden parachute. I'll tell you what, I mean, almost $1 million per win, I think it was this past year. He's got 60-some million more in the bag on the way out, plus whatever the Suns are paying him, whatever the offset was there. It's he's living a charmed life in the bank account. We'll just say that much. But boy, imagine telling Monty Williams just a year ago. Maybe like 14 months ago when he was still the head coach of the Suns, how the next 2 years would go. When he had them in the Western Conference Finals, I guess that was two years ago. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that this is how all of this would turn out? Monty Williams would look at you like, what? I'm a successful head coach of the Suns right now. They're not going to fire me. Let alone I'm not going to get fired at the next job I'm at. Well, buddy, I got some news for you. NBA coaching is not a fair business. That's kind of the moral of the story here. That NBA coaching, they will chew you up and spit you out in the most record time that you could possibly imagine. It is, it's not fair. It's certainly not fair. I think coaches need to be valued more in the NBA, but they are not. They are the scapegoats every single time out there. At the very least, they get big buyouts, and that's what Monty Williams is looking at right now. I'm not sure what the market for Monty Williams is going to be after this, though, because I think the only open coaching job right now is in Detroit. Maybe they have one in Washington. I don't know. I don't think they have one in Washington. Detroit fired their coach fairly late on. Especially since they haven't been in the playoffs the last 2 months or so. They could have done this any time in the last 2 months, but they decided to wait until June to do it. So now they're the only team looking for a new head coach. And why in God's name would you want to go to Detroit unless you're just that sold on Cade Cunningham, which, buddy, I don't know. I love Cade Cunningham. Don't get me wrong. This is not a slight on Cade Cunningham. He is an electric scorer. He is a fantastic player. He's everything that we thought he would be coming out of high school even, then going to Oklahoma State and balling out. He has been amazing since he got to the NBA. It's also the Detroit Pistons. And the Detroit Pistons are a laughingstock. They've been a laughingstock ever since they won their last championship, pretty much. Ever since Rasheed Wallace left town, they have been poo-poo dog shit, with the exception of a couple 8 seeds sprinkled here and there. They're not a very good basketball team, and they're not a very good organization behind the basketball team, and no amount of Cade Cunningham's is going to change that. They are bad. They are bad. So unless you are really, really desperate, you are very, very desperate for a head coaching job, that's not going to be a very attractive one. I hope James Borrego doesn't go there because, man, that would be a serious fall off. You're looking at one of the iconic franchises in all of the NBA, another playoff team vying for your services, to all of a sudden, the Detroit Pistons are the only option? Oh, shit, I just go back to, I think, New Orleans. I think he's in New Orleans right now. I don't know. Stay the associate head coach, dude. There's going to be some openings next year. Maybe you'll have shit. Maybe Pop retires. He's getting up there in age. Maybe Pop retires if they have another kind of so year down in San Antonio, and you can take the San Antonio job. Conversely, could also be the Wizards you're looking at, but could be San Antonio. Could be Victor Wembanyama you're looking at. So, yeah, I hope for the best for James Borrego. I don't know who the hell is going to dive on that grenade with the Pistons. So, good luck. Good luck. That's all I got to say on that one. And we're already at the last headline, by the way. We're like not even 30 minutes in. We're going to run this thing over 30 minutes, but this is going to be a real short episode. Real short episode, folks. Which is, not all bad. You don't need to hear me talking in circles all the damn time. Just every so often. Every so often I like to flit around in my mind. This just insufferable prison of my mind. And it's fun. It's fun. I'll tell you what. Either way, final headline here. This one is in college football. Also, by the way, Alabama, number 2 recruiting class right now. Kalen DeBoer. Oh, you know what? I'll end off the show with that. Actually, let's put the cap back on there. Boom. Put the cap back on the bottle. Put the cork back in there. We're gonna set this ding 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 right on the ground over here, and we're gonna talk about a little bit of Brent Venables because the man. Scary looking man, one of the scariest looking mans in all of college football when he smiles. I'll tell you what, when he's grimacing, when he's angry, he's even scarier. But man, those eyes when he smiles, those are the eyes of a killer. But he's a very rich man. He's a very rich man. Oklahoma locked him up on a 6-year extension, which I don't hate on the surface. Not a bad coach, not done a terrible job over the last couple of years. Kind of brought the defense back to Oklahoma. I think got them very well prepared to go into the SEC. We'll see how Jackson Arnold does this year, but that's kind of to my point as well. Seems kind of early given we don't know what his team is going to look like now that Dillon Gabriel is gone over in Oregon for his final year in college football, his 17th year, grizzled veteran in college football. Now Dillon Gabriel's gone. Jackson Arnold is in, former high 4-star, low 5-star quarterback there, very highly touted coming out of high school. Now that he's taken over, we don't know what he's going to look like. It could be, he didn't have a very impressive bowl game versus Arizona, I believe they played, through like 3 interceptions, something like that. Had big yardage in that Jeff Lebby offense. Shout out Jeff Lebby, by the way, head coach of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. But he had a bunch of turnovers, didn't look quite ready. Also, new offensive coordinator too as well. Didn't even think about that at the time. There's no guarantee that the offense is going to look nearly as good as it did the last couple of years with Dillon Gabriel and Jeff Lebby kind of piloting the ship a little bit. But on the surface, I don't hate it. I think Brent Venables has done a very, very good job. He's done almost exactly what they expected him to do. I mean, Oklahoma fans' expectations are irrationally through the roof at all times. I mean, if you're not winning 11, 12 games every year, they're saying, what the hell are you doing? We're here to win national championships. We're not here to be just really good. 10-win season, not good enough for us. We need 11 or 12 at the very least. So I feel like, though, they brought him in to bring back what? The defensive talent on this team. They're in a fairly southern footprint, not the most southern footprint, but in Oklahoma, you're in a fairly southern footprint where, especially with a big brand, you can reach out down south and into the deep south and kind of, pluck some guys a little bit more on the defensive line. The giant athletes that Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Texas produce every single year. You can get some of those defensive line prospects, secondary prospects, and I'll be goddamned, it's exactly what Brent Venables has done ever since he got there. The defensive recruiting profile has ticked up so incredibly substantially compared to where it was with Lincoln Riley. You can't call it anything but a success at this point. I think the talent on that defense is as good or better than it has been over the last, decade or so. They have a really talented defense there with Oklahoma, and that is due in no small part to Brent Venables. Now going into year 3, by the way, Brent Venables. Year 3 is when you really start seeing the culture that you built into this team start to take over. It's why this year for Billy Napier is going to be very interesting, and he's facing one hell of a gauntlet, so good luck to him down there. But for Brent Venables, you got your quarterback in there you brought in and recruited in Jackson Arnold. You got a deep defensive line now with the way that you've recruited on that side of the ball. The offensive line is unquestionably a question mark. There's no two ways about it. They lost a ton of guys to the NFL and graduation and transfer portal, all that sort of good stuff. Got a bunch of young guys in there that you recruited, though. It'll be a young offensive line, but it'll be a talented one. Wide receiver, still a question mark. I think they got some good players in the transfer portal, though. It could be looking like a very, very smart move by Oklahoma to extend Brent Venables before the season, just because the price tag after the season might have been even more so. So, again, I don't hate this on the surface. I think there's a good chance that Brent Venables comes in and plays very, very well this season. It's just maybe a little bit early, and secondly, you're playing in the SEC now. It's not like you're going to... who do I want to disrespect right now? You're not going to a West Virginia, let's just say, on a given week. There's a Vanderbilt in there somewhere, but outside of that, you have got lean, mean fighting machines from top to bottom in the SEC. Even teams in the bottom half, like Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, they'll give you a run for your money every single week if you're not careful. If you don't show up focused and if you don't overwhelm them with talent, with the way that you've built your roster. You got tests every single week, not just from the top half, but the bottom half as well. And they're facing a lot of the top half this year to boot. So there is no guarantee that success will be had this year. In fact, there's a good chance Oklahoma wins less games than they did the last couple of years just by virtue of being in the SEC. That doesn't mean they don't have a better team, though. I think they have a very solid roster over there in Oklahoma. My hats go off to Brent Venables because he has done one hell of a job in building that defense up from scratch from where the Alex Grinch, kind of, brought him down to, and, continue that trend over with USC. Don't need to piss on a dead man's grave, so I won't keep on expounding on that point. But yeah, I feel good about this extension with Brent Venables, all things considered. I feel like it was a little bit early, but there's a good chance it works out well for him in the end because you got a really solid coach locked up for the foreseeable future. Is he a great coach? We're going to find that out over the next couple of years in the SEC, so stay tuned on the answer to that one. But I'm going to end this thing off here with a little discussion about Alabama. And I think a lot of people, whenever... Kalen DeBoer was hired there, coming from Fresno State by way of Washington, or Washington by way of Fresno State. I can't remember what the order of that is when you're talking. He went from Fresno State to Washington to Alabama. God damn it! That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to be eloquent with it, and I'm failing. I'm falling flat on my face trying to do so. But there are a lot of questions. The point being, coming up from Washington, or coming down from Washington, rather, if you're talking geographically. Would Kalen DeBoer be able to relate to recruits? Would he be able to come down and keep the recruiting level at what it was when Nick Saban was still there? And I did not go so hard on that side of things because I am not like a goldfish. I don't have a short-term memory, even though it may seem like that way sometimes, trying to figure out names and all that bullshit. But I remember when Brian Kelly took over at LSU. I remember saying, I don't know how he's going to relate to players down here. I don't know if he's going to be able to recruit the South. We'll see if he can get the talent there. He couldn't really do it at a high level at Notre Dame. Who's to say he's going to be able to do it at LSU? Then he consistently reels off top 5 classes in both the portal and recruiting. Seems to do just fine. And it's crazy how that stuff works. And what I learned from that experience, what I learned from being wrong at that time, because never waste a failure. Never waste a failure. That was a failure on my part, saying that I don't know if Les Miles is going to be able to recruit at a high level in the South. And you know what I learned from that? I learned that the staff that you put around yourself is more important than your personal affability in a recruiting room. It matters more who the supporting staff is than who the head guy is when it comes to head coaching. Brian Kelly put together a monster staff down there when it comes to recruiting. Guys that knew the area, guys that had ins with all the high school coaches down there. Basically exactly what Brian Harsin didn't do over at Auburn is what Brian Kelly did do over at LSU, and that's the reason why he's had such good recruiting success down there. Not because he's a dynamic personality when he comes into a room to recruit a kid. It's because he's got guys that are on the team that know the recruiting space, know what high schools pump out the talent, know the players that are coming up out of the high school ranks, and are very good at bringing those players in. That's why he has had success. Now, you transfer that over to Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer comes in. All we knew was that he was the head coach whenever he was first hired. Big time splash. I think a lot of people saw it coming, but ultimately, big swing from Alabama. They're a marquee name. You knew they were going to get a marquee name in return for that brand recognition. They bring in Kalen DeBoer. People are saying, I don't know, this Northern guy's never recruited the South, yada, 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 all that good stuff. And I sat back and I said, let's see. Maybe I didn't say it on this podcast. Honestly, can't quite remember. It would be smart of me to have said it on this podcast, so let's just pretend I did. Wait and see what the staff looks like. What does the defensive coordinator look like? Well, it's the head coach of South Alabama that came over, who intimately, I mean intimately, knows the state of Alabama and recruiting, and built a monster at South Alabama, by the way. Go back and look at some of those South Alabama teams over the last couple of years since that guy was there. And I apologize to that man. I do not know his name. I just know he was the head coach at South Alabama. And they got a different head coach to come over as like co-defensive coordinator, something like that. I think still a guy that was in the South. Maybe not his last job, but at some points. Either way, that South Alabama head coach, he was a wizard at evaluating talent, bringing guys in that were undervalued by the big guys, and making monster teams out of them. You can go back and look at the last couple of years of what South Alabama has done, and it's not just that one year back when I was in school at Mississippi State. They show up in week one and they kick the game-winning field goal. They beat a Power 5 team in Mississippi State. They've been doing stuff like that over the last several years. South Alabama was a damn good program. And part of that was the predecessor to him. He continued that tradition, and it was all based on how he evaluated talent. On the offensive side, you look at the position coaches. All of them kind of got ties within the state. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, at all of the key positions that come to recruiting, you have guys that know the state, that know the landscape, have ins with all the high school coaches that you need, know where the great talent is coming out of, know the talent that's coming up not even just in the state of Alabama, in the South in general. Just know where the guys are coming from, who is coming up at all times, and can, by proxy, be aggressive with those guys in bringing guys in. And what the difference is between Kalen DeBoer and Brian Kelly is that Kalen DeBoer, you get him in a room, he can sell ice water to someone in a first world country. He can sell you. You can go to a restaurant, you can get ice water for free. Kalen DeBoer is going to walk up to you on the side of the street and tell you, hey, look, man, you're going to want this iced water, and here's why. He's going to lay out a 5-point recruiting pitch to you, and by the end of that, you're like, God damn, how much does this cost? $5 for this iced water, this 12 ounces of ice water? I'll pay you $50. I love the cut of this guy's jib. That is the type of dynamic personality that Kalen DeBoer is. And I don't think that's the end-all, be-all when it comes to recruiting. Again, see Brian Kelly in this whole thing. Kind of a dickhead, but a very good recruiter because he put the right staff around him. Now you got Kalen DeBoer, put the right staff around him, and he is a dynamic recruiter. And all of a sudden, you got Alabama with the second-ranked recruiting class going into the 2025 season. Everyone thought the mass exodus was the end of the world there in Alabama. And, hey, maybe they're not quite as talented of a group this year as they have been in the past with the exodus of the guys that left. Maybe it's one down year. I don't think they're going to have one down year. And that down year may be 10 wins and a back-end playoff berth when it's all said and done. I think Alabama is not going anywhere. I feel like Kalen DeBoer was the right hire. I think he's a hell of a coach. I think he can coach his ass off, and he's got the right staff around him to recruit the South and recruit aggressively, which he is clearly doing with the guys that he is getting. So, again, someone's going to get hired from a school up north that come down to the South. Maybe it's going to be Florida next year. Maybe Florida is going to hire someone from up north who hasn't had a whole lot of experience. Maybe they hire a Jed Fish or someone like that. Hire someone with not a whole lot of experience to come in and take over the program. And people are going to be saying, probably a lot of Florida fans are going to be saying, what has this guy done in the South? Can he recruit guys from the South? Can he relate to kids from the South? And I just want you, when that happens, because it's going to happen, think back to your friend Caleb. Think back to the example that Brian Kelly set for us. Horse's ass, a guy that is not incredibly likable in a lot of scenarios, goes down south, has incredible success recruiting. Kalen DeBoer never recruited a lick of players in the South in his entire life. He's got the second-ranked recruiting class now going for the 2025 recruiting class. Think back on to the lessons that your good buddy Caleb teaches you here. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this little diatribe, it is that the staff that you surround yourself with as a college football head coach makes 15 times more of a difference than who you hire as a head coach when it comes to recruiting. Now, when it comes to coaching, it's all going to come down to what your process is. But when it comes to bringing in talent, it is all about who you surround yourself with. And with that great message, I'm learning folks today. I'm teaching folks the good gospel of knowing ball right now. But with that, that'll be all for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. We do this thing once a week during the off season. You can find us on all the platforms that are worth listening on, right? I mean, 99% of you are going to be on Apple. You're going to be on Spotify. You're going to be on Amazon Music. You're going to be on YouTube, for that matter. And you know what? That's where I want you to find the show. We're on all 4 of those platforms. So you go ahead, listen to that, hit subscribe, share it with a friend, help me grow this damn thing a little bit. We're plateauing. We're plateauing at a low level, and I don't like low plateaus, folks. We got to bump those numbers up. Get them going. It would help if I tweeted out the podcast on a consistent basis, but I'm bad. I'm bad at this. I am bad at promotion. I'm good at talking, it would appear, on this platform. Not in real life conversation, but I'm good at talking on this platform and on the phones. But, you know, right here, we're trying to keep on pumping up this audience to get this thing going. So, I don't know what that accent was, but you understand. Help me grow this thing a little bit. Share it with a friend, or 15 for that matter. Everything helps. Everything helps, my guys. You can follow me on the Twitters. I refuse to call it X. You can call it X if you'd like. I won't trust you if you do, but you can call X if you like. Follow me on the Twitters at CalebVUA. And that link will be down in the description. You can contact me by either going to that Twitter, shoot me a DM. I'll probably respond because I don't get a whole lot of DMs. Or you can go to the email, unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Feel free to opine there and see if you want to add something to the show. Outside of that, though, thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. I very much appreciate it. As always, though, I got no clue what I'm talking about. One thing I learned this week, though, horses can't breathe through their mouths. They also can't vomit or burp. There you go. The more you know. Cue the NBC logo. We're out of here. See y'all next Tuesday.